Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session around generative AI. We're going to be talking about what it is and how to incorporate it for your business. My name is Brianna Brown. I'll be moderating the conversation today. I'm joined by three incredibly talented individuals in the industry. Ben Kessler, president of 66 Degrees, Clive D'Souza, head of partner engineering at Google Cloud, and Matt Kelberman, VP of data analytics at 66 Degrees. First off, thank you all for joining this conversation. I think there are about 100 sessions around AI, specifically generative AI, so thank you all of you for choosing to join us today. We really appreciate it. I will give each of you the opportunity to introduce yourself more formally, and as you do so, if you could answer my first question, what was the first prompt that you put into Bard? Ben?
Oh my gosh. My wife and I have 4 kids, and what we've loved using Bard for is actually creating supplemental course material for our kids, and to help them shore up any weaknesses, and then ultimately overperform in particular areas as well. And what I've been really impressed with is that you can train Bard for saying, hey, help my 3rd grader shore up some math problems and give us some math problems that she can work on to level up to the rest of her class. And it's been really impressive, and it's helped her. It's caused a big impact in her life.
Awesome.
Okay, mine is not as deep as yours. So I have 2 teenagers myself. Apologies for the voice, folks, by the way. So about 6 weeks ago, or maybe give or take, there's this artist called Taylor Swift, right? And she had this concert in Seattle, and the tickets were super expensive. I literally had Bard say, give me the best time window where I can go and buy the tickets for my 2 kids. So not as fancy as yours, but it actually gave me some suggestions that if you look at this specific time, this specific day, you'll have a better luck. It kind of worked out okay.
Did you go?
I took my son.
My name's Matt Kelberman. The first time that I used Bard, my sister's daughter loves the beach and frequently makes them drive over an hour. I'm from Orlando, Florida. Frequently makes us drive out to the beach. But we'll get there, and she's absolutely terrified to step foot on the beach because she's afraid of the pokey shells if you go to the beach with the sharp shells. So I grabbed some of the shells, some of the sand, put it in a little bottle and for a birthday present, and made a little poem using Bard around pokey shells at the beach.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, as we talk about Bard and Gen AI, there's a lot of hype, as we all know. It reminds me of the hype that we saw around blockchain and NFTs. I'd love to hear from any of you, what is so special about Gen AI, and will it fizzle out like any of the other fads we've seen previously?
That's low-hanging fruit. Look, I've been in the industry approaching 25, 27 years. I saw when internet came, I saw when the whole construct of mobile phones came in and became an extension of us. And it fundamentally changed the user behavior. Now, and I can go speak on and on, but generative AI in and of itself is an extremely, extremely powerful tool. It's not a service, it's not just one offering. It touches every segment. And if you look at how the engagements are going to be, not just the citizen developers or the data scientists or the customer support or the end user, everything across the board will get impacted, right? What people are finally realizing, if you go back and look at it, people used to always say, data is king, data is your currency, and there were many adjectives to it. But the reality is to be able to go get that data and get those actionable insights, not by just looking at one single unimodal construct, has come today. We can now get the insights or the inputs from multimodalities, and you can actually go and drive actionable insights. We have examples, Thomas talked about it. We actually have a pharma company which took the data from multiple clinical studies and actually did a drug discovery, which is 88% close to reality. That's big. It's not another NFT/Bitcoin, right? So this is not going away. We have developers who are using it with Cody, and they literally say that this is paired programming in real life. I have a buddy who sits and makes sure that when I'm deploying a VM, I'm deploying an operating system instance, I don't have to worry that, is this compliant, is this secure? It's taken care of for me, and it's done in real time. So these are the instances, across the spectrum, We are seeing them getting more and more integrated. This will become ubiquitous, right? It's a matter of time.
Yeah, Clive, I love where you're headed with this. I think about this question with a few different frames,
Sure.
and as you've hit on, is the end users, the use cases, and then ultimately the impact. And I think about, as you think about blockchain, from an end user standpoint or a user standpoint, it's really, frankly, people in IT or people in finance that are really, it's a point solution directed at those user groups. And then in use cases, I would say it's not as broad, certainly, as Gen AI. It's more narrow. Particularly, there's a number of healthcare use cases, or there's a number of financial services use cases that I can think of. But then if you look at the Gen AI in comparison, you think about those three different areas from an end user standpoint, a use case, and an impact. End users it's everybody, frankly. It's for those of us that have used Bard, and hopefully everybody in the room, it's made for the CEO, it's made for the IT person, it's made for the customer service rep, it's made for the salesperson. It's made for a young person. I think the ability and the reach of this is really from an end user, and then the use cases. Just to think about the industries and then the job functions that this impacts. It's not just a finance and a healthcare solution. It's ultimately we're seeing use cases at 66 degrees in retail, and consumer, and business services across all different kinds of functions. And we're seeing functions, sales and marketing, customer success, R&D, we're seeing use cases. But then, and you just think about, and you hit on this, Clive, it's the impact that this is creating. And I would argue a few different impacts is, it's helping companies' revenue. Yep. It's drive revenue and change customer experience. It certainly is helping become really more efficient from a business process standpoint. Yep. And I think what to me is the most exciting part is it's impacting our productivity. Yep. Is that it's the impact of Matt or Clive or Ben or Brianna is 10x because of that Gen AI, which is to me frankly to me that creates staying power.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from any of you, and Clive especially. We've had the privilege of working really closely with you at 66 on all of the Gen AI activities we're doing. What makes any of you the most excited, and specifically the position that 66 is in to win with generative AI?
Look, at the end of the day, on an average, I talk to between 15 and 20 CXOs a month. And across the entire spectrum, mid-market, enterprise, and you name the Fortune 5,000, if you will, generative AI in and of itself is a board-level discussion. It's no longer a technology thing. It is something that people don't lead with. The skill set you need for this, it's very unique. You need a combination of, you gotta be a DevOps engineer, you gotta be a data scientist, you gotta be an analytics engineer, you gotta have the infrastructure mindset. And majority of the large enterprises just don't have the skill in-house. We've seen that. The second thing is the speed at which it's moving, right? The ability to reskill, upskill from a pure strategy to deployment. If you don't get behind this in the next 30, 60, 90 days, you're behind. You're behind competition, right? And lastly, we are seeing, and as is with any large technology, it's not about just the technology in and of itself. It's the strategy you lay down, the vision you lay down for what use case, like Matt was alluding to, and how the end value will be realized by the business units. Simple things like having a data strategy. People talk about governance and compliance. And there is security, of course. And every CISO, the first question they ask me is my data secure with this technology? What is the stack doing? Is there an ingestion and ingress and egress of data? Those conversations at front and center we have, and partners have done that really well. But we also realize that the data siloing, which is essentially what happens when you get overtly secure and start blocking it, defeats the purpose of Gen AI. You want to be able to spread it. And Gen AI is a team sport, people. It's not the product marketing will do its own thing and product development will do its own thing. So where we are seeing partners such as 66 or the wider ecosystem, they have that wide lens, and the industry doesn't know what it doesn't know. So when you have that skill set going deep and having that wide lens, this is where the impact of Gen AI is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think what stands out to me is actually that it empowers the end user like no AI application ever before. You as a user can just jump on, got to have a Google account, but you jump on and you can immediately start getting insights, getting feedback, having a conversation with this technology. I think another really important, critical thing that's important about what it's bringing to us is a focus on data curation. Mm-hmm. Data curation is more than just the data lake trend of storing as much data as you can possibly fit into the cloud, right? Data curation is being intentional with the information that you're using, being able to train these models with that information, and really even refine it, right? If you think about an artist, you have to have the appropriate colors on a palette to create a masterpiece, right? That's really kind of true for these specialized models as you start to get into it, in order for the AI to create their masterpiece. It's the foundation that helps provide the appropriate context. It's the foundation that helps provide accuracy and really helps give it that human-like interaction, that's so valuable to us. A final thing that I really am excited about is the focus that it allows us to bring back to traditional AI and ML. I think different use cases that pop up. If knowledge search is a really common one, you've probably heard a lot about it today and the rest of the week. With knowledge search, a lot of an organization's knowledge is locked up in what we consider dark data. It's unstructured information stored in pictures, photocopies of licenses or documents, piles of it, right? It's not an uphill battle. These organizations, they've been storing it this way for a long time, and they've found no reason to change, right? But it's not an uphill battle now with the generative AI use cases that they're trying to accomplish to say, hey, use something like document AI, to bring structure to that information so that you can build those insights, that you can have that curated data to provide as either context or training for these tools.
Yeah. Ben, I'd love to hear your perspective as well. You've been really successful in leading technology companies and now a services company. For others in the room who are in a similar role to yourself, what considerations do we need to think about when incorporating generative capabilities?
It's a great question, Brianna. I would say we should consider, and we at 66 Degrees and help our clients consider a few different areas. I think the first is really a data modernization strategy. Matt had hit on this so clearly in his point. Is Clive shared that Gen AI, in a matter of months. You think about some of the initial tools came out in November of last year, Q3, Q4 of last year, and they've already made tremendous advances. In order to take advantage of this, what we're seeing is that you have to modernize your data infrastructure, and you have to prepare your data so that you can fully take advantage of these large language models. And at the end of the day, now is the time to take advantage of that. Again, we're still in the early innings here of AI, generative AI, but in order to modernize your infrastructure stack, in particular your data stack, and frankly, Google Cloud gives you a great opportunity to do that, bring in a partner. Have a data engineering team focus right now of how do you structure your data, clean up your data so that you can take advantage of that moving forward. Once your data is structured and once you're on the road to data modernization, I think what's really important is to think about really things that people don't necessarily like thinking about, but ethics, compliance, security, and a couple things that you gentlemen have hit on earlier today is from a security standpoint is how is your data secure? Is your data leaving your organization? And look, I think if you have a generative AI tool that's public facing and pulling your data in, there are some serious concerns from a security standpoint. Are you giving your IP as a business over to ChatGPT? Are you able to create on your Google Cloud instance a large language model and a tool and a solution that only pulls your data or only ultimately pulls information from your data lake. That has a much more, it's a much better strategy from a security standpoint. I also want to hit on ethics and compliance here, in the sense of if you're having a tool that's pulling from your data stack and your data, it's so much better from an ethics and a compliance standpoint, because ultimately then you're not pulling from somebody else's information. So many of us work in knowledge-based businesses, and we sell knowledge and expertise to our clients. What we would hate to do at 66 Degrees is sell somebody a solution where we couldn't trace it. And so what we're doing is ultimately modernizing our data, ultimately in helping clients modernize their data and help build so that we don't run into ethics and compliance issues. Brianna, the last thing I just want to hit on and share is, I think you have to take people, your people, into consideration here from a change management standpoint. I think we'd all be lying if we said, Gen AI doesn't give us a little bit of butterflies in our stomach. What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to my people's job? And I've loved going back and forth with Clive and Matt and Brianna on this, is the sense of, I think we have to answer that to our people. We have to face the tough questions head on, where we say, hey, this is our generative AI strategy. This is how you as a manager and as a frontline worker are going to be impacted and benefited by this strategy, and then bring people along for the ride. Show them how people that know how to use generative AI are going to excel in their careers. I think change management is essential. And in fact, frankly, look, all three of these pieces are critical, but we got to bring our people along with us.
Absolutely. And Matt, you work with our clients often. You talk to them frequently. What do clients and customers need to understand about the process of implementing generative AI?
I think the biggest thing is, and I think, Ben, you mentioned it, you just have to start, right? You don't want to be left behind. I heard this on a podcast, so I'm going to repeat it because it clicked in my head. It was amazing. Look at Tesla, right? Tesla's got tens of thousands of cars out there driving tens of thousands of miles, building millions, billions, trillions of data points. Can a Tesla drive itself today? Arguably not. Sorry if you're a Tesla owner. No offense there. But 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, those millions, billions, trillions of data points, who in the market is going to have the right mix, to be able to provide the models to support those self-driving cars, right? So you think about that from a generative AI perspective, you really need to start your strategy today. Now, I'm not trying to fear-monger anybody into thinking you have to have this massive enterprise solution, right? I'm thinking from a crawl, walk, run perspective, starting with crawl. Let Bard help you compose an email or set a meeting agenda, right? You start to play with the tone. You start to play with the structure of the statements, right? And hey, you're prompt engineering day one. Kudos. As you build comfortability with it, right, you start to get into that walk phase. You're going to start recognizing other areas, whether it be other areas in your own day-to-day workflow, it could be your team or somewhere within your organization. You're going to start to think about ways that you can operationalize Gen AI, right? And that could become a nice little project for the team where now additional members of your team are starting to get involved. And as you start to think about run, there's two things to really start to think about, right? You're ready to productionalize this thing, right? You're ready to get past the science experiment. I think a lot of folks are in that science experiment stage. But when you're ready to productionalize these tools, you're starting to think of a couple of different things, right? There's some of the total cost of ownership type considerations. Do I have the staff right now that knows how to work with this? Do I need to invest in training for that staff? Do I need to bring on new staff, to augment the skills? Do I make or buy this solution? Do I try and build this myself, or do I work with a company like 66 Degrees that can help accelerate that time to ROI? These are the total cost of ownership type considerations, but there's also the fun technical considerations that I get to live in my world as well, right? You're starting to think of, well, how do we maintain these models over time? Ben mentioned carrying your team along. There's absolutely a place. When you talk about reinforcement learning through human feedback, right? It's an excellent opportunity, both internally as you're testing this out before you've even released it, to get that type of feedback that can help augment the tool that you're building, and you're incorporating those folks as well. They feel like they're invested in not only using the technology, but really helping build it. They feel like subject matter experts, right? You get into a much larger slew of considerations. You start to think about the modern ML ops being LLM ops, right? How do we manage different versions of this model? How do we evaluate it against a baseline? Is it still answering the questions that internally we ask or that our customers are asking? You get into model versioning, right? So as you start to run, that's where working with an organization, like Google, like 66 Degrees, to help you get through that hump is critical.
Yeah.
Matt, it's fascinating you share this, because the word that comes to mind is advocate. If we can create advocates in our organization that, hey, I've used this as a business owner or as a technology owner. Then I think oftentimes people in the organization can turn the light bulb on, and the advocate can help those people turn the light bulb on. I think if it's just the IT department or just a business stakeholder selling this, it's a lot harder. Whereas if you have people in the field selling this, it gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
One thing, if I may add, 2 points you both brought up, change management, and as it turns to the jobs, right? So I'm just going to say this openly as an engineer. AI is not going to replace humans anytime soon. Humans who know AI will do better against humans who do not know AI. That's just the reality, right? It's a new skill. And the other thing you brought up, and when you talk about data curation, you talked about how you want to put the guardrails around it. Again, the grand scheme of things, the generative AI, as it relates to technology, as it relates to outcomes, as it relates to the actual experience an end user gets it, regardless which persona it is, you have to keep in mind that the entire application infrastructure, that whole modernization, that stack, that still needs to move to the cloud. Those things still need to happen, right? Generative AI is not a panacea. It's not going to show up in a boardroom and say, go make my customer service awesome. It's just not going to happen, right? There's a significant amount of engineering work that needs to happen. You need to curate the data. You need to have your landing zone. You have to have a security posture. So I want to ground people that when we talk Gen AI, it's just that the time to value they can get from their migrations, that shrinks significantly. But the actual infrastructure and app modernization still needs to happen. And that's something we keep repeating to people. Other people say, oh, wait, I can use AI. No. You got to still do all of this in the cloud. So it's a good point you raised.
You bring up the time to value, and we've had a couple conversations. You've all said it. Organizations need to start thinking about generative AI now, or AI now. Why now? What is going to happen in the next, say, 1, 5, or 10 years that makes it so important for businesses to start thinking about this today?
So let me leave you some examples, right? We saw how General Motors is using the actual generative AI in the interaction with the end customer. Now, as a user, as a consumer, if I'm going and buying a car tomorrow and you don't have the OnStar-like experience, you're going to lose that experience right off the bat. We saw how Archana's team showed where they were able to look at the actual alerts of tickets showing up in an email and an actual response which was crafted where in the stack. Now think in terms of a ticketing system, now think in terms of your SRE engineers or your support engineers. If you are not able to go and maintain that level of engagement with your end users, your end constituents, you're going to lose. Somebody else is going to move into that space. So it all boils down to how rapidly you can make this as part of your existing stack. Generative AI is not going to create a net new workload. It's just going to make your incumbent workload a lot better. And you will see the way you engage with it, just a natural language, a developer asking questions. Make this database go into the Cloud SQL, do it for me. Or take it out from an on-prem, closed proprietary Oracle database into something, give me Alloy DB. Those are things which will give the people who use Gen AI and integrate it a lot bigger head start, so to speak. I mean, this becomes germane to your value proposition.
Yeah, I would say that if I had to, and Matt, I'm curious on your thoughts where you're seeing over the next next 1 to 5 years. But I would say if I had to say there's these 4 functions that are most ripe for disruption, here's what I would say. I think sales and marketing.
Yeah.
I think the customer interaction and the ability to target market and the ability to frankly extend our salespeople. I think the person that has the highly sophisticated solution sale, that's probably not going to get extended or productivity, but certainly customer interaction, sales and marketing. I think number 1. Number 2, I would say customer support. And I think your OnStar example is perfect in this. Is that if OnStar is really offering this and GM is really offering this, you see labor shortages right now. We're never going to find personnel to deliver that. So how do we amplify those customer success people with technology? And then I think there's 2 other areas that I think are really, if audience members are sitting and thinking of how do I apply this to my business, it's software development. Is I think paired programming. We're still going to need great developers and great engineers. There's no, and frankly, we have a shortage of those at this point. But to co-develop, thinking about QA, thinking about developing, thinking about checking from a code standpoint. These are areas where Gen AI is really, I think, going to make leaps and bounds. And then I think the last piece is that, for those, if we have anybody in the audience sitting in the pharma industry, the R&D space. I think that really where we can rapidly see great use cases with Gen AI is to compress the time to launching a drug is in the R&D space.
Yeah, you mentioned R&D. Something that really stands out to me. I see, as I look into the future here, I see a modernization of the marketplace in terms of monetizing this, right? I see a marketplace for large language models. So R&D is a perfect example. I think right now we have these large commercial behemoth, but unspecialized large language models like Bard, like ChatGPT. I think in the near-term future, it's already started, we'll see highly specialized models out there in the marketplace for folks to be able to use. Things like models specialized in research and development, things for experimentation and cost evaluation. I think we'll see models for legal document review, case studies, right? I think there's going to be a number of those that come about.
Yeah, and can I add one point? One of the things when my memory recall here, if you look at the way Vertex AI extensions have come in, right, where we can actually tap into real-time data. It's no longer just a frozen model, but you can tap into what's going on, pick your data source, pick multimodal on that, and marry it with what we are seeing in the ecosystem, where we are seeing the first-party open source as well as third-party adapters and model languages come in. That is where the disruption is going to happen.
Don't I mention it's already happening, right?
Yeah.
Look at MedPalm 2. Google's already producing a healthcare model to help answer questions safely and more accurately specific to the medical industry.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have given so much information. Hopefully the audience feels the same way. If there's one thing you would want everybody here to leave with, is there anything that comes top of mind that everybody can take home?
Yeah, I can go. I think Ben, you mentioned it. You need to understand that you're not restricted to just using those large, behemoth, unspecialized data sources like Bard, like ChatGPT. There's a lot of fear around, what if my secret sauce, my company's IP, I'm asking it questions and thereby training with it, right? What's really important to note, hopefully you're attending some sessions and learning about like Vertex Model Garden, right? You don't have to start from scratch on a model. You can absolutely start with these foundational models that's your model. You have the ability, to fine tune and train these things. You have the ability to keep that information within your tenancy, so the privacy of the data shouldn't be a concern to you. I think that also really helps from an ethical perspective as well, because at that point you're not worried about how Bard is being trained. You are in control of the information that you're fine-tuning your models and providing as context.
Look, market leaders are made in times of disruption, and this is one of the pivotal times in technology. I've seen a few of them. And if my one guidance is for the entire ecosystem, is understand Gen AI not for just the core of the technology, but understand how it relates to your entire business strategy. right? It's don't use technology for the sake of. And look at every single point in your entire value chain where you can adopt it. Because if you don't, your competition is. I mean, that's happening as we speak. And that's how fast this space is moving.
Clive, I played college football, and I recognize that if there's any other college or high school athletes out there, is that to think that you're going to play a game, frankly, better than you practice it's foolish in many ways. The analogy I would provide is, I think now is the time to practice and prepare your organization. And if I were to think through of, if I were preparing for a college swim meet or a golf match or a football game, is what would my reps be at this point? And I would think across a few points, because I don't think, it's not like the Super Bowl is going to be tomorrow or the national championship is going to be tomorrow, but we're going to see this, to your point, this disruption, it's coming. It's coming. And so how do you practice right now? I would say you practice by modernizing your data. How do you prep your data? How do you build, Matt, to your point, how do you build a proprietary solution that is unique and proprietary to your business? If people are keeping an eye on LinkedIn, McKinsey is already out there. They have a proprietary model that's surfacing their information. I think in many ways, as we as knowledge companies and other companies, it's a great time to build a proprietary model on top of our modern data stack. And then I would say is, how are you finding those advocates in your business that you can train the people so that they can get the most out of AI? And I've seen a study out there that says, hey, the middle management and managers are the key to this. But I don't disagree, actually. I think the technology will progress so rapidly that it's our responsibility as leaders from an IT and a business standpoint to enable our people to take advantage of this with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you to the three of you. This does wrap our session. As a reminder, we are 66 Degrees, Google Cloud partner. If you want to learn more about generative AI, we have some demos going on at booth 609 around customer retention, some investor reporting, and please come take a look. We'd be happy to have a conversation. And thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it.